Hello, everyone. I'm Mimi Lichtenstein, and today I am here with Anastasia Kitzel, and we are going to be talking all about Puerto Rico. Anastasia, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mimi, for having me here.
Well, I'm delighted to have you here, and I think it's a fun show to do because, as you know, I was in Puerto Rico just last week, and we got to meet in person, which was so terrific. And there was just so many, active, adventurous, cultural, historical, culinary things that we did that I definitely want to share a lot of those things with everybody today. So I'm excited to have you here to join me. Tell us a little bit about, you want to start with an overview of Puerto Rico, like the different areas that people like to go to and, some of your favorite areas to go to?
Yes, yeah. I'm based on the northern coast as we speak, in the city of San Juan, which is the capital of Puerto Rico, in the heart of its cultural life. As I say that, I'm very aware that the other capital of Puerto Rico, which is Ponce, right across from us on the south, will very much object to me saying that the most interesting things happen in San Juan, because Ponce historically has been a commercial capital of Puerto Rico, at the height of the sugar production. So it has a lot of lovely places to visit, family estate, haciendas that are really beautiful, and also has some amazing nature around it. I love the drive to Ponce. It's a very easy drive, sort of straight highway with beautiful scenery. And it's a great place to kind of, for me to disconnect as a local, and also for our visitors to get another sense of Puerto Rico. To the east, we have El Yunque, which is the national tropical forest. It's the only tropical forest, the rainforest in the U.S. National Park System, and a remarkable place to disconnect and meditate because of its breathtaking views and amazing scenery. And as we go sort of a little bit further east, there are the lovely islands of Vieques and Culebra, which is when people ask me at the trade shows, well, so you live in Puerto Rico, where do you go on vacation? Well, I go to disconnect to mostly Vieques, because Vieques combines both amazing beaches and also great nightlife and very interesting kind of mixed local, mixed expat community of people of all walks of life who just decided to make this beautiful, pristine island their home. Vieques is fascinating because you have horses roaming all over the place. Some of them have an owner, some of them don't. But sometimes you literally feel like you're driving in a safari, because you really have to watch out, especially at night. You have to watch out for horses roaming on the roads. It's a very rural, but also very beautiful, very tropical part of Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm. And as we move west, on the northwestern coast, there are several places that are fascinating because of the karstic zone. Geologically speaking, Puerto Rico has some volcanic past, but also some. We have a lot of the mountains that were formed. They used to be under the water and were formed by the deposits of the seashells over millions of years. And so now the rivers, the underground rivers, have made their way through that material and have created amazing caves on this stretch. And as we move further, if you move inland, you have the mountainous region. What you see in the dark blue color, that's the mountain range of Puerto Rico. Has a very interesting mix ethnically, because Puerto Rico in general is, and I know it because there was a DNA study actually done on Puerto Rico. So we've got about half of the genes are European, quarter Taino Indian, and quarter African. And so in the mountains, you have folks who have resettled during the Spanish times from Spain. From Spain, and even some German families have come in the middle of the 19th century. So you've got a lot of different ethnicities, great food, and amazing views with the altitudes of up to 1,000 feet above the sea level. And then as you go to the light blue, to the extreme left for me, right here,
the West Coast.
This is the area that is known for amazing sunsets, whale watching during a certain part of the year. And it's a world in and of itself. If you look at the map of Puerto Rico, probably people who live in this part of the island, they think that we in San Juan are like New Yorkers. Always stressed and worried about traffic, worried about things that are completely immaterial. Meanwhile, the folks who live on the West Coast dedicate quality time to their families. They go to sleep earlier. They wake up earlier. They're much more in sync with nature, with themselves. And to them, we are literally the metropolis that has lost its, its natural north, so to speak, and is out there and burning their candle from the both sides in the urban frenzy. So this is the West Coast for you. Lots of places to eat, lots of seafood that is fished, right there, and a lot of great conversations, because I think, and I wonder maybe if you had the same experience, is that Puerto Rico, the people here are so hospitable that it's a big part of the experience, just chatting with locals and getting to know everyone in their own realm and in their own world.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And we'll definitely touch on a few of those things, experiences that we had, one of which was with you regarding salsa dancing. Here's a question for you, for everyone's benefit. Hurricane Maria, we all know and saw the publicity when that came through. This is an island that was devastated, right? It didn't have electricity. Jose Andres came in to feed people, served, I think, millions of meals. And I think his organization is still there, helping people who are a little bit down and out in Puerto Rico. But when I was in San Juan, Old San Juan, that whole coast near San Juan, you would never have known that. Like, there's no sign.
It's fully recovered in that sense.
Yes, which is amazing. I couldn't do like a comparison of before and after, but to see how resilient the industry is and the people are to bounce back from that was just really heartening. And I think when we were in the South, I would say driving around, it was definitely a different picture. Like, some of the towns didn't seem like they were bounced back yet. Clearly not the same kind of tourism dollars are focused on the southern edge of Puerto Rico like they are on the north. So they still seem to have quite a bit of work to do to come back.
Yeah. Hurricane Maria has really been, in my time in Puerto Rico, and I've lived here for about 20 years, has been the most impactful event of this nature that we've had. And I think historically it happens like once in 100, literally in 100 years.
Yeah.
And it went straight, through the island. Only the west, I think the West Coast had a force 3, the equivalent of like force 3 winds, whereas the center and the east part of the island had probably about 5 plus. Mm-hmm. So it was quite an impact.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, for me, it was fascinating to watch after the hurricane. First, Puerto Rico is very community oriented and very interconnected. So it was the neighbors that came out to clean the streets because, of course, the government was overwhelmed. There's no electricity, so everybody pulled out everything they had frozen in the fridges, knowing that it's not going to last long. So there were a lot of people barbecuing right outside, sharing food. We all on our team were all involved in relief and medical evacuations, getting water filters with assistance from Rotary International, providing technical support, technical assistance to nonprofits that later came to rebuild the housing for folks who've lost their homes. And we've done a lot of as a team, logistics for distribution, food distribution and medical sort of distributed medicine. So in that sense, we were right in the thick of it afterwards. And you see how everyone has come together at that moment. And another part that for me was very remarkable about Maria, and I'll mention just 2 things. One, the cultural community bounced back like literally instantaneously right after, even before the infrastructure needs were taken care of, because culture is very thick, it's very important here. And so it was their way of saying, as far as the artists and the dancers and the musicians, it was their way of saying, we're here. And it was their way of saying, we're strong, and because we have the spirit, if you have the spirit, the body will come back. So that was very remarkable. And one, I'm thinking of a friend who is a very highly qualified dentist here. And talking to her after Hurricane Maria, she had all the resources to leave and spend some time. She had family in California that were literally campaigning for her to go. And what she told me was very simple. She says, I have two boys who were probably about 14, 13, 14 at a time. And if I teach them that when you see a difficulty or an obstacle, you get on the plane and run, that's not a good lesson.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll stay, and they stayed through the whole period of recovery. And for her, that was an opportunity to teach them that you can have a great life without the iPad.
Yeah.
You can appreciate your sort of invest more into human connections and less into electronics.
Yeah.
But for me, it was remarkable how many people locally and also folks who moved here from different states of the United States who have really come together to help recover and then rebuild. So
yeah. Well, you know what's interesting too is that when you look at tourism around the world, right, it's certainly suffered over the last couple of years. And so
yes.
I think that for those of us that can go travel, part of that is helping, with the community there, right, by injecting funds and resources back into the community so that the people who are working at the hotels and who own the local restaurants, right, so that they can do well by their family and earn a living again and, contribute to the recovery of the island. So I think it's a wonderful testament to the people of Puerto Rico, and I was pleased to be a part of it. And I know for others who are considering, I want to go to the Caribbean, which island should I go to? How do you decide that you want to go to Puerto Rico? Well, hopefully at the end of this conversation, you'll probably think like, oh, I do want to go to Puerto Rico. There's a lot of fun stuff happening there. And I had taken my kids to go live in Madrid a few years ago for a family sabbatical. And when we were in Puerto Rico, I happened to bump into a family I know who was down there for a year. They moved down there with their kids. And I thought to myself, wow, my life would have been a lot easier had I chosen to go to Puerto Rico instead of Spain, because I wouldn't have had to deal with all of the visas and translations and all of that stuff. So they're living down there with their young children who are, learning to be fluent in Spanish and having a completely different experience. So if anyone's thinking about that, I would say, think about it and explore the idea. Okay, let's dive into some of the other fabulous things in Puerto Rico. The great thing is, again, it's a Caribbean island, but it's full of culture and history and wonderful things. So this, I think, is a fairly iconic photo. And for those people who are listening on the podcast and not looking at it, it's of one of the forts that was built, I think, starting in the 1500s for a couple hundred years. Could you give us a little bit, just touch on briefly, where this fort is and what it's about, and then a little bit about what's on the back side of it where families go on the weekends?
Yes, totally. Well, Puerto Rico, it was discovered originally by Spain, but because of its geographic location, it's literally one of the first islands. If you sail, not motor, if you sail from Spain from Europe in general to Puerto Rico, because of the trade winds, you almost naturally end up here. So whoever owned Puerto Rico in those times basically held the key to a forepost. Puerto Rico didn't have that much gold or silver of its own, but it definitely had a strategic location that allowed to defend and protect possessions in the Caribbean in general. So Spain defended it tooth and nail. We had France that once tried to take it by force. There was Dutch who tried to take it in 1625. There are numerous, multiple English excursions to the island. So the forts were essential to protect it from the invaders. When you look at the fort from the sea, as we're watching it on the screen right now, for those of you who are here and see the photo, it's formidable. What's interesting is that it was built in this way to send a message, because inside usually the garrisons were quite small. So sometimes the soldiers had to run back and forth between different cannons to fire the shots and project an impression of a numerous army, which there has never been. And now it's a museum. It's a beautiful place, beautifully restored. It's also a national park museum. And behind the walls, behind the fort itself, there's a beautiful green open air spot. You know,
Yeah,
it's
like a park.
immense, and look, it's traditional. I would say it's a rite of passage for Puerto Rican kids to come and fly kites near El Morro. It's something that is a part of everyone's childhood, and it's a beautiful place. You can come out, have a picnic. I've had participate in multiple classes. Sometimes get to yoga. I've been here watching the sunrise, sunset, and also the moonrise. So it's loved by the locals, and that's one of the spots that I would definitely recommend to visit. One for the history, and then for the local experience
Yeah.
as you enjoy the green behind the El Morro.
And I think the day that we were there, I think was a Saturday afternoon. So just like anywhere else, the weekends you have more families gathering than during the week. But it was not a sea of people. There were probably 100 people spread out over a very large area, flying kites, having picnics. We were getting ice cream. It's just a really fun family afternoon where it feels like you are surrounded by local people. Now, I love this photo because before I went to Puerto Rico, I wouldn't have recognized this, but it's on so many of your license plates. And we ate at a restaurant that is named after it. So tell us a little bit about its significance.
Well, if it's the garita, right?
Yeah,
The
the garita.
little part of the fortification that is meant for the sentry for the watch to be held. The El Morro has a number of those. San Cristobal, which is another fort, has a number of those, and actually one of them has a love story, a romantic story attached to it, where the one of the soldiers that was holding guard had disappeared, and so it got the name of Garita del Diablo, or the sentry box of the devil. But that's the sort of the formal legend. But there's also, as in every legend, there are two versions, and so there's a story going that he had eloped. He had escaped. He left the military service because of his loved one, and they both escaped to Puerto Rico, to another Latin American country. So every spot here has significance, and every spot here has a story behind it. So that's the Garita del Diablo story.
I love that one. Well, I love learning new things on vacation, right? Like I'm somebody who could learn all day long, and many people who go away in particular, some people who want to go on a beach vacation, they just want to sit at the beach. I'm not one of those people. So I like all this fun history and culture and insights. One of the things I learned, this photo is of La Perla. So the guide that we had, that Anastasia had suggested for us, took us all around Old San Juan, which was so fun, full of information. And there happens to be a neighborhood outside of the city walls called La Perla. And maybe you could just touch on briefly what that's about. But the fun thing for us to learn, given that I was there with 4 18-year-old girls, is that the music video Despacito was filmed down in La Perla. So I don't know that I'd ever watched the music video. I've heard the song a bunch of times. So afterwards we watched it, and it was fun to recognize many of the places that we had walked through with our guide. So do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of what La Perla was and where it's gotten to?
Well, La Perla has a lot of history. Historically, if you go back to the 19th century, this was a place where the meat markets and all of the warehousing related to the Sunday, the weekend market in the old city was located. So it was historically working class area that did not enjoy as much the luxuries that you would see in those times in Old San Juan. Because Old San Juan, as you walk it, it's full of beautiful colonial buildings, multi-story homes that were usually owned by one family, very, very posh, very nice, built to last for ages, which was, and they were owned by folks who were quite well-to-do. Whereas La Perla has always been the socioeconomics of underdog, so to speak, of the old city. It has a very vibrant and very authentic local community. I remember a friend telling me a story of how they were working with national parks to connect El Morro and San Cristobal with a walkway, which now has happened. You have enjoyed that walking area, which large part of that has actually been a part of this cultural infrastructure development effort. And they had my friend was telling me that they were having community meetings to explain the project because the community tended to be more kind of to their own. And it was interesting how in the room everybody felt silent because they were waiting for the elders, for the sort of the grandfather-looking man and the grandmother-looking lady to express their opinion on the project, because that's how they feel this is the right way to do. So it was kind of a mix of the old and the new, where you have a federally funded initiative between two national park sites connecting with a walkway to have tourism a little bit more vibrant and more open, and then you have this community where forget about the federal funds, forget about the mayor, forget about all these officials. They'll look into the elders for opinion before deciding to proceed. So this just gives you an illustration of how much history is there and how much culture and how interesting the place is. And Despacito was chosen La Perla was chosen as a site for Despacito. And that has opened the community up because when you have a video that generates over 6 billion views all over the world, of course, the fans come down to Puerto Rico and they come knocking on the walls, so to speak, of La Perla because they want to see where this was filmed and how it happened. And so that was a part of sort of the opening of La Perla and being more integrated into the tourism world, but it's still very authentic. There's one nice restaurant with a great view to eat, but the rest of it is just community people living their lives as they have for decades and for who knows, for centuries, you could say. So it's.
I had a small surprise when walking through. I don't have a picture of it, but there was the biggest, fattest turkey I had ever seen, like a full-size turkey. It looked like it could be on the cover of a Thanksgiving magazine. He was just hanging out in the streets one day. So I'm assuming somebody owns him, but that was a fun surprise when we turned a corner.
And probably there are plenty of roosters and chickens running around as well.
For sure. Many of those all over Puerto Rico. So I would say for sure go and visit it with your guide. I think it's a great thing to do with your guide. You might get a little meandering lost if you did it without one. And so this next place I loved. First of all, I love this photo, which is your photo, because it clearly must have been taken around Christmas time, perhaps.
I'm a night bird, yes.
Okay, so this is a huge building. It happens to be where Anastasia's office is, so lucky Anastasia. And I walked into it. It has a huge courtyard. Plaza, and I thought to myself, this reminds me so much of Plaza Mayor in Madrid. And then can't remember if it was you told me or Paolo told me that it was actually modeled after Plaza Mayor in Madrid. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, because the building was built by the Spaniards to host initially Spanish soldiers and officers, and then it has sort of over the years it has been a home for U.S. military. It has been a home for different entities, and now it's basically a cultural site. So every floor has a museum, different organization that's related to promotion of Puerto Rico's culture and art.
And coffee shop on the first
floor. And coffee shops as well, yes.
And
one downstairs, Del Ruiz, that's where I get my coffee.
Excellent. And then when we were walking through with our guide, it just so happened they had a couple that was going to be getting married. It wasn't the whole wedding, but they were doing what my kiddo said was the first look. So we watched the photographer set them up so they were facing apart. And then he stood there and she came walking up to him and tapped him on his shoulder, and he turned around and the photographer was running all around taking pictures of people's expressions. And that was a really fun thing to witness too. So it's a beautiful building. What is the name of it?
Bayaja.
Okay, Bayaja. And it also happens to be where we took some salsa lessons later in our trip. So there is a photo of that in a minute. I decided not to show a video of me taking salsa lessons and instead to just show a photo. Oh, here it is. It was a beautiful spot to do it because it was open air. We had myself and the 4 girls and our instructor, who was amazing. And I think for anybody who's going, who wants to have a bit of experiential introduction to the culture, taking salsa lessons is super fun.
I'm very biased because I love salsa. And when people ask me, why did you come to Puerto Rico? I say, well, the official story is Procter & Gamble, but the real story is salsa.
Well, we actually had a great time. And my daughter and I were in St. Lucia last month, and we took some salsa lessons there too. So it was fun. We had a little bit of an intro. And you know this. So I think the night after, it was the same night after we had these lessons, we went and met you out in La Placita and went to De La Vida, which is super fun, super local, where people dance salsa. And there were a couple of people who were phenomenal dancers. And one of them asked my daughter to dance and one of her friends to dance. So we watched her, who just learned how to do it, dance with this super experienced guy. And it was absolutely so fun, huge smiles on their faces. So I highly recommend, if people are interested in having an experience with the local culture and local people, to do that for sure. Okay, let's transition a little bit to, actually, before we do, I had a question for you. When we were there, we were talking about movies that have been filmed in Puerto Rico. There's quite a few of them. And I think it's Black Panther 2 that's being filmed right now. But between El Yunque and the beaches and other areas, what are a couple of other famous movies that have been filmed down there?
Well, the Under Suspicion with Morgan Freeman has been filmed here in Puerto Rico. In fact, as I mentioned to you earlier, when I was living in Old San Juan, I happened to rent in the same place where the studio had rented the apartment for Mr. Freeman. So we had the good morning sort of session every morning when he was going off to work and I was going off to work as well. The Assassins were filmed here in Puerto Rico. And most importantly, the Pirates of the Caribbean were filmed here as well. So as you enjoy the forts, one of them, San Cristobal, shows literally the part of the movie where this big carriage is coming up to the palace, and that was filmed here. So we have, one of the things we do sometimes is have a tour that focuses on all of the back streets and all of the different locations where the movies have been filmed. And actually one of them, which is fascinating, is Rum Diary with Johnny Depp. So it took us some time of scouting to find exactly the street where they were rolling down the stairs in a little car. And we actually were able to sort of reconstruct some of the locations. So it's something for those who are movie aficionado, that's a different twist. And as you well noted, you can see it's palpable, like they were filming the days that you were here. And I think they're still wrapping up the last part of it.
And I know there's one other movie being filmed there upcoming. I can't remember the name of it, but clearly there's some scenes and some locations that if you do have kids who are interested in a particular movie, to go do a potential reenactment and take a photo of it would probably be a fun thing for them to put on Instagram. So I always like knowing those little facts for my teenage visitors. And then what about, before we transition, agriculture, sugarcane, coffee? Obviously, there's a lot of that within Puerto Rico, and we didn't have an opportunity to do it, but I know that you all offer some experiences like that where you can go to the local farms and meet the local farmers and the people who do this. Do you want to share maybe one or two of those type of things?
If you walk the old city and try to taste different types of coffee, pretty much every time you taste coffee, you're also visiting a coffee shop that is owned by a family that has been in coffee production for many years. And so they have the haciendas, so the coffee plantations in different parts of the island. There's also historical Hacienda Buenavista, a well-preserved plantation that has all of these steps of coffee production as it used to be done in the old times, and a lot of those techniques still prevail. In addition, for rum, for example, you can do rum. You could go to Bacardi, which is a more folks who are interested in this big kind of industrial approach to how do you become the biggest rum brand in the world. And that's the Bacardi tour for you, with all of the marketing muscle and production capacity here in Puerto Rico. But if you're interested in the traditional way of making rum, we have one of the places that actually has resurrected, literally, because in modern rum production, because of the volumes, oftentimes the molasses is coming from could come from other countries. But what they've done in this local hacienda is they've planted sugarcane, as it used to be in good old times when all of the sugarcane plantations were based in Puerto Rico, and they've basically have the whole cycle, the full process from sugarcane production, sugarcane harvesting to the aging to the distilling to the tasting. So it's a full cycle for rum. And then in the end, of course, you get to taste the rum that you have sort of watched being made. So on the food side, there are lots of different options. There are farms where you could collect your own fruit and vegetables. While you're here, you can actually, there's an online site that collects and helps sort of channel from farm to table for from local farms to folks who live here. So, for example, if one is renting a villa or Airbnb, you could actually take advantage of this few times and order your local fruit and vegetables from local farms as well. So, different opportunities, from tasting to partaking in the process and becoming the part of the farm to table culture here.
Yeah, very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that, because I do think that for people who have the time, that would be a fun experience. Someone had written in about the migration and affordability of the island, and a few other questions, which, given so many of those things, well, affordability in particular is relative. I'll just ask maybe a question about when we send clients places. Obviously, it depends upon what kind of hotel level you're staying at. But in general, would you say over the last 5 years or last couple years, there's many places in the United States where real estate prices have gone through the roof for a variety of reasons. Has Puerto Rico, and in particular San Juan, felt some of that?
Yes, to a degree. I would say probably it's more applicable to the sort of tourism areas, to the metro area, because we have seen post enactment of several laws that basically support investment in Puerto Rico. There's been an influx of folks who basically have left California or left New York to come to Puerto Rico because of the climate and also because of the tax advantages that it offers. So I'd say yes, you see that, but also as a visitor, you're probably less. You may not really feel it because part of that investment has gone, for example, to create more Airbnbs. So I wouldn't say that Airbnb pricing, went up because there's more supply. Now, if you'd like to buy something, it probably costs you more in sort of on the beachfront communities. There's a little bit of an impact of that. Probably less so in the middle of the island or in some of the non-metro areas that we have covered.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so let's transition to all the fun, active, and adventurous things to do. You touched on driving through the middle of the island earlier. We did that when we were going from Old San Juan to the south. And on the way back, we took a slightly more western route, and I zoomed out on my map, and the road went like a piece of wiggly spaghetti. So if someone gets motion sickness, keep that in mind. My daughter does actually get motion sickness, but she was totally fine. We had the windows open. It was a beautiful day. But when you go places like there or El Yunque, hiking is, something that my clients love to do. I love to do. So you have places like this where you can go and do spectacular hikes. Do you have a favorite place for hikes in the island? Would you say El Yunque, or do you have a different one?
Well, I have, as far as hiking per se is concerned, I would probably opt for El Yunque because I'm a sort of a urban hiker, which means that I love the exercise and the views, but I don't want to get scratched or too muddy in the process. So I'm kind of middle, not very extreme experience seeking hiker. So El Yunque is amazing because all of the paths, you can literally go to the highest peaks in El Yunque in a very structured environment in the sense that you're stepping on a road, on a stone path that has been built for your convenience. So you get the benefit of the nature, while there's no risk involved in walking through the national park with all of the sort of mapped and paths and paved paths for you. So, so that's probably if you ask me. However, if I'm to look for a place to disconnect, and I would probably choose a more rural, less traveled location, like the one you're seeing on the photos. This is the mountains between Utuado and Adjuntas. This is the mountainous area where you literally are in the vicinity of the highest peaks in Puerto Rico. You see the lake down below, and this particular place provides more like camping opportunities where people come with their own tents and they have a chance to have a dinner at night at the location, but the rest of the things they bring themselves. And so this is more of a kind of hardcore
Remote
folks, right?
Yeah. And then this one, so Paolo, your colleague, had told me, and I think actually Tony, one of our guides, about this hike Forte Capron, which is down in the south. And the girls and I did it one day. It's only about, at a healthy pace, 15, 20 minutes up. But you get to the top and you have this old fort that you can climb up to the very top of that. I don't remember. I think, oh no, I don't have a picture of us at the top, but the views are stunning. You see out into the ocean, you see some of the keys, you see the beaches where the Spaniards and the Americans entered Puerto Rico when they came long ago. So this was also another hike that I would say put on your list. It was beautiful. And then our kids actually went and did beach yoga one morning, which was super fun. So that was another opportunity to be outdoors and be active. And you touched on before the surfing. I have a lot of friends who've been to the Rincon area in the northwest corner that you mentioned to do surfing. Also on the North Coast, there are beaches, better than me, but outside of Old San Juan that I know Paolo had sort of designated beginner, intermediate, and advanced. Have you ever tried surfing, and do you have any favorite surfing beaches up there?
I have not. I swim a lot. I try to swim almost every other day. But I have not tried surfing myself. But I have a lot of friends who surf. And Puerto Rico literally is not just a surfing place; it's a surfing destination.
Yeah.
Since the '60s, we hosted surfing competitions. Some of the Puerto Rican surfers. I actually once rented an apartment from a gentleman who was in top 10 surfers at his prime, and has competed in places like Japan and Hawaii. So we have a very active, very vivid surfing culture, and that applies to all of the water sports. And I always say, when I describe water sports, I always say that the beauty of Puerto Rico is that there's a lot of, the offering is really wide because all of the locals have a favorite sport, water sport of their own. So some with kayak, I have friends who are kite surfers. You can dive. Many people own a motor boat or a sailing boat. You can take sailing lessons. You can hire a boat to go around the island and the Vieques and Culebra, which are also known as Spanish Virgin Islands. You can do it on your own if you have a license, or you can take have a fully catered trip, with the captain, with all things taken care of for you. So there's it's a big variety of what you can do in terms of water sports and opportunities.
And we were able to get out kayaking, which was so fun. A lot of people hear about bio bays and the bioluminescence. And I think that I'm pretty sure Puerto Rico has 3 different places, one in the south, one off Vieques, and the one we went to near Fajardo.
Yes.
And that's the one tip for that, which we were going to talk about at the end, but I'll throw in here, is that if you do want to do something like that, definitely go as far away as you can from a full moon, because it does help seeing the bioluminescence to have that contrast. Okay, I love this. I don't know if it's going to play, but I think that kite surfing is something that I want to learn how to do. My family has taken lessons. It's very hard to learn how to do in one day. It's certainly, you're not going to be that good. It takes a while to even actually get in the water. But when I was down there at the Ritz-Carlton, I saw this happening. And this is a guy on essentially a kite surfing board with an e-foil. So he's popped up out of the water. And instead of having the actual sort of, I guess you would say, the sail from a windsurfer or up in the air from a kite surfer, he's actually just holding on to it, and it's helping him float through the water. So
imagine
cool.
the workout. Imagine the workout with doing that, where you are your own mast, right?
Yeah. I think I want to dedicate a solid week to learning maybe how to do this. I was going to do kite surfing, but maybe this. I don't know, how good I could get at the end of it, but for me, it just seems like something that would be like flying, right? Where you're just like out there. Yeah. And you just keep going. It's not like surfing and the wave's over and you're done. And then fishing is obviously a big part of the culture, and we ate a lot of fresh fish. And if you want to go out fishing, I think you can catch tuna and marlin and maybe mahi. So that's a really fun part of it. And then here's a photo of one of the walking paths from the Ritz Dorado, which we'll touch on in a few minutes. But, walking through, I think they have like 16 or 17 miles of trails, or just El Yunque, right? Or even just, urban walking around San Juan. There's a lot of opportunities, and you see so much. Now, if somebody wants to go to Culebra or Vieques, either for the day or for overnight, you could go on a ferry. You could fly, actually, or you could charter a catamaran and go out there. If you're staying in Old San Juan, would you recommend doing that as a day trip, or is that, I know, it's a solid hour and a half from the East Coast. So would you suggest an overnight, or suggest stay out on the East Coast, or could you do it for a day?
Technically, for example, if you fly from San Juan to Vieques, it's only a 20-minute flight. And you literally can arrive maybe half an hour before. It's not an airport experience. It's more of an experience like if you would take in a train, like very laid back, very casual. So you could do that. But I would definitely stay more than one night in Vieques, because you've got, you want to dine probably at one of the local restaurants. You probably would want to enjoy like a morning beach, when it's still like very fresh, and the sun is soft versus just being there during the day. So I would definitely recommend Vieques for at least one or night, or maybe 2 nights, to kind of feel the pace and disconnect and enjoy. There's a black sand beach in Vieques where the sand is black due to a particular mineral. We also offer the opportunity to go on a trail, horseback riding. You can do that. And there's a very vibrant local gastronomic scene. It's much smaller than in San Juan, but very fun. So you can do a lot in a relatively compact period of time. But I would definitely recommend at least an overnight, or maybe even 2 nights on the island. You can also, another way of getting there, you could probably drive to Fajardo and then take a boat, like a private boat. Or if it's a party, if it's a family, you could also charter a plane. The same plane that takes you there on a regular basis, you can charter a plane as well.
How many passenger plane is that?
10.
Okay.
That's a trip. But it's usually it's from Ceiba, which is the eastern part of Puerto Rico. It's about 10-minute flight, and from San Juan, it's about a 20-minute flight.
Okay. Sunsets are a big part of my life traveling with teenagers, because they all love the golden hour. So every day, a little after 6:15 or so, we would make our way outside. And really, it seemed like we had beautiful ones in San Juan, in the south, like wherever we were, there were gorgeous sunsets. So I would say, if you love taking pictures of beautiful sunsets, Puerto Rico is definitely a great destination for you. And I'm going to ask you a little bit later about your favorite spot, maybe in San Juan, to catch the sunset. And then puppies. We had this situation happen. A friend of ours from where we live actually has a puppy rescue organization that goes around the Caribbean and primarily in Puerto Rico, and rescues puppies and brings them back. And she found out I was there, And she wrote me and said, "Hey, can you bring back a couple puppies?" And of course, I asked the girls, and they were said, "Yeah, let's bring back some puppies." So this is a picture of the two puppies that we brought back with us on the plane. And in the beginning, it looked like they were going to be a little bit whiny, like, wanting attention or to get out. But they immediately fell asleep and slept for the whole 4-hour flight home. So
Right.
it was
Mhm.
so easy. And I haven't checked with her to find out where the puppies are today, but they're probably in some lovely home with some happy little children who are thrilled to have a new puppy. So if you are going to Puerto Rico for your trip and you're interested in that, send me a note. Happy to hook you guys up. And then cooking classes. So cooking food is always a big part of people's travels, whether you be eating things or making things. So we had the opportunity to do a cooking class. And one of the fun things for the girls to make was the tostones, which maybe tell us a little bit about like, what is that? Tostone is a plantain, correct?
Yes, plantains are a big part of local cuisine. If you think of the role of perhaps potatoes in American cuisine, it's used in soups, right? Fried or mashed. Plantains basically perform that role here in the Caribbean and especially in Puerto Rico. And what you see on the picture is the making of tostones, which is basically used almost like a bread. When you have your dinner, you would have tostones served. Pretty much bread would be served in our traditional sort of North American setting. And once you slice the plantain and you fry it a little bit, then comes the part with the tostonera, where you want to make sure that it's flat. I mean, there's no gastronomic taste-wise reason to it. It's just a tradition that it's not going to be puffy. It has to be flattened. So the tostonera is used to accomplish that. And then the el tostón is fried again. Saying the word el tostón brings associations because in Puerto Rico, for some reason, when you've got an unexpected problem, something suddenly occurred that requires some resolution, you say que tostón. So it also is present in folklore in many ways. Plus, there's mofongo, of course. It's almost
Yeah.
like mashed potatoes with bacon, but then what's used for the base, right, is cooked and fried and mashed plantain.
Mhm.
And you have amarillos, which is the ripe plantain when it's deep fried, so it has a sweeter texture to it. You've got guineos, which are the little plantains, sort of the baby plantains. They're not sweet. They look like baby banana, but they're not. They're not sweet, and they're used for different marinated types of foods. So you've got plantains galore. You can't leave Puerto Rico without having tried one and one of its
Yeah.
many.
We had them one night with our ceviche, which was a fun way to have them. I had it with fresh fish, red snapper one night. So there's lots of opportunities to eat plantains, that's for sure, and tostones. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the hotels and accommodations throughout Puerto Rico. Obviously, there's a lot of them. We're not going to touch on all of them, a few highlights. El Convento in Old San Juan, I would say it's a virtuoso hotel. So correct me if I'm wrong, but would you categorize that as the nicest, most luxury property within Old San Juan?
Yes, yeah, most definitely. And they have experience with taking care of the most, demanding, exacting guests.
Yeah.
It would probably be classified as a five-star hotel, but because of, it's a colonial infrastructure, so you cannot add a huge pool.
Right.
You cannot add immense gardens. You have a building that used to be a monastery, a convent to be specific, and it has been transformed into a beautiful, authentic, an architectural gem with everything preserved, and added all of the amenities and the service that an exacting traveler would need. That's El Convento for you.
Nice. And then as far as 4-star options go on the beach that aren't too far from Old San Juan, I love the Fairmont. I went and did a site visit and saw their pool. So as far as being in that general area of Puerto Rico, the Ritz-Carlton actually has a second hotel in this similar area, but it's been closed now since the hurricane. Has it been closed
Yeah,
since the
yeah.
hurricane? Yeah. So we're hoping it reopens one day, but at the moment it's not. And there are other beach hotels, Grand Hyatt, there's a St. Regis, sprinkled about the coast. And, as is usual with my clients, it just really depends upon who's going, what your family's like, what you want to do, how close you want to be, how remote you want to be. Are you going to get a car or not? A variety of things like that. This is a photo of the Ritz Dorado. So I'd sent several families to the Ritz Dorado before who have all loved it. So I was like, okay, I need to go see it. And I loved it. Absolutely fell in love. It is a huge property. I think it's 1,600 acres, formerly owned by the Rockefellers. And because of that, for those of you who are watching, you can see some of the rocks in the ocean that he had placed there long ago before it was not considered good to do that. And so it helps break the surf. So the water over by the sand is actually quite calm, but yet you still have these big waves crashing a little bit away from you, which makes it a really fun vibe and experience. And I love how they have so many units with plunge pools. Their first floor units have plunge pools. Their top floor units have rooftop plunge pools. So the views are obviously spectacular. I love too that they have indoor and outdoor showers, maybe in every single unit. I'm not sure, but I love those because I love a good outdoor shower. And then their spa is, of course, magnificent. This is a photo of kind of the hot and cold area. So they have warm water, cold water. You can pull a rope and have a bucket of cold water dump on your head, which I'm sure is a very invigorating experience.
To say the least, right?
But their spa was absolutely beautiful. I absolutely loved it. And I met, as I was going around on a golf cart with Pedro, I met some people who were biking around with their kids. There's some famous actors there. It's definitely a place where people who want the best go. They, have all sorts of, 2 golf courses, 2 18-hole golf courses, a huge water sports center, multiple pools. They have this whole kind of water park area where it has slides for the kids. They have a lazy river, ping pong, basketball, a gym that I would say rivals anything in New York or Miami. So for the person who's looking to have a luxury vacation, I would say this would be the top luxury property in Puerto Rico. And I learned, because I met with the sommelier, that they have the largest wine cellar in the Caribbean. So for people who are into wines, it's also a great destination for them. I always love throwing in over-the-top ideas. So yachts, Anastasia, I'm sure would be great at sourcing some beautiful yachts if somebody wanted to take those on part of the island or out for the day. And what about, well, this is a photo of the 5-bedroom villa I did a tour of at the Ritz-Carlton Dorado too. So if you're looking to have an over-the-top vacation, I would say rent the 5-bedroom villa at Dorado.
Yes.
We'll get you a yacht to go out on the water, and we'll have you dropped off with a helicopter at one of the 3 helipads that are on site at the Dorado. So if you want to go over the top, I think the Dorado is the place to be. Anything you want to add to that I missed?
The just an odd kind of a curious fact: the champion surfer that I've mentioned to you before was my landlord is also a helicopter pilot. Apparently, the adrenaline rush is with you. It doesn't matter, when or at what stage in life. So he and a number of the very fine professionals fly helicopters here. So yes, it's an option. We've had some guests taken a helicopter from their boat actually to El Yunque area, Rio Grande area at one occasion. So that's definitely an opportunity. And I think it's something to keep in mind that there's so many things to do in Puerto Rico. So you can literally splurge as much as you want, or you can also have a mixed experience depending how much you want to kind of go deep down into local events, local culture. So it's that depth that is really impressive.
Yeah, I would agree. And maybe before we touch on the favorites, like as far as putting together a complimentary itinerary, I think someone could surely go and stay just at a beach resort or at Dorado for a week, no problem. But if they wanted to, my favorite would be to spend some time in Old San Juan and combine that with time at a
Yes.
beach resort. Yeah, I think that's nice because then you get a little bit of the urban vibe and also a little
Yeah.
bit of the relaxation.
Yes.
Okay, transition to favorites. I have a few favorites of my own to share, but I'm first going to ask you. Tell me about, I don't know, whatever favorite cafe, sunset spot. Tell us a little bit about some of your favorites.
Well, you've mentioned Old San Juan, and that's a place where, when I first came to Puerto Rico, I literally lived in the colonial city for probably about the first 15 years of my life here. So I feel San Juanera, the resident of Old San Juan, longtime resident of Old San Juan, and that's a place where if I want to have beauty around me and also have plenty of gastronomic sort of options, things to enjoy and indulge myself with, that's definitely a place. So, running down the list, Don Ruiz in Bayaja, that's my favorite place for coffee, super friendly, and also great coffee to start the day. I love for lunch, either Barachina or El Punto, because both places have a great authentic mofongo. You cannot leave Puerto Rico, like not allowed, illegal. No se puede if you have not had mofongo, because that's such a hearty, like local meal, and it's very special. It's, you're not going to get anywhere in the world. In fact, when I travel outside of Puerto Rico for extended period of time, when I crave foods, I'm like, I miss my mofongo. So it gets to you in a good way. Piña colada was invented by a local barman who worked at Barachina and then later moved to Hilton. So now both places compete for the name to be the place of the invention, but it actually was. The fame belongs to the man who invented it, and it's also there's a place in San Juan, Barachina is in Old San Juan, where you can taste piña colada. Now, for fine dining, I would recommend Marmalade here, also in the old city. A Swiss chef that has traveled all over the world and worked with Michelin level restaurants and has settled in Puerto Rico. An exquisite, fine experience of enjoying food to its highest. So I'd say these would be my spots for food per se. Definitely salsa dancing. Cannot leave Puerto Rico without at least having been a part of it, right? As you ladies have enjoyed to the fullest. And on sunsets, you can either do El Morro in San Juan. You can also do, for moonrise or for sunrise, you can also do Loiza, which is the slightly eastern part of the San Juan.
Great. Thank you. So I echo some of the things you said that I got to try, and I'll throw in a couple of other ones. One is gelato, because ice cream is always a favorite with kids or teenagers. And this one is called Anita La Mama, I think, which is right in Old San Juan. Line was out the door down the block the night that we went there, which I think was a Saturday night. So it was definitely the place to go to after dinner or after going to a club. The flavors were spectacularly delicious, and they had so many, and it was beautiful, as you can see from the different photos. And then I just happened upon this little bakery called Spiga, and it's owned by a woman and two brothers who work at the front here. And they had cookies that were mini, but reminded me of Levain in New York City. And I'm in love with Levain cookies, so I was super happy with that. And I brought the girls home breakfast pastries and sandwiches from here, and everything was delicious. So highly recommend that. Super nondescript storefront, but it was delicious. And then what was it? Oh, Latte 23, where you and I met. We ended up going there late. It's a little bit like a food court, food truck kind of situation. Probably want to get there by like 5, 6 o'clock at the latest, because they were closing up when we were there. And they have a variety of local type foods, but we only had so many choices since we were late. And we had fried chicken And we all said it was by far the best fried chicken we'd ever had. It was chicken tenders and chicken sandwiches, absolutely delicious. So highly recommend that too. So there's certainly lots of places that you can go when you're there. And maybe I'm going to follow up with a couple other tidbits about some takeaways in the show notes. And you and I obviously will keep the conversation going. I hope to get back to Puerto Rico, and I hope to send many more clients. I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. And I will look forward to touching base with you because I do have clients coming in a couple weeks and hopefully sending some more.
Thank you so much, Minnie. We look forward to having you here so we can embark on your plan to learn kite surfing. So it's very contagious, a wonderful, adventurous, and contagious idea, dream to have. So,
and you know what? I just feel like it'd be a super cool skill to have that, here I am, at this stage in my life, and I'm going out to learn how to kite surf. So maybe it'll be 2022, if not 2023. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.